Why were you trying to contact me?
You oppose the heretics, those that took the old machines as gods.
All kinds of organics fought Sovereign and his Geth allies. Why am I so interesting?
You were the most successful. You killed their god. You succeeded where others did not. Your code is superior.
Welcome to Superior Code, a solo podcast. I got the name from Legion talking to Shepard in that audio you just heard. And I just want to talk about Cora Harper and her character, and that I find her so interesting. I really like her character, and I want to talk about why she gets a lot of hate from players when there are other characters who have a similar backstory as hers, where they just don't fit in with their own people. First, I want everyone to really think about, if Cora was an alien, everyone would find her interesting. So, if Cora was a Solarian, Turian, Krogan, Quarian, Drell, Batarian, Hanar, Alcor, or Volus, or even an AI, people would find her character interesting, and her reminiscing over the years of her being an Asari Huntress. They would really find that interesting, how she just doesn't fit in with her own people. Like, everything's about her the same, except she's not human. People would have no complaints. It's just gotten so ridiculous where I'll watch a blind playthrough, and as soon as someone starts an Andromeda playthrough and Cora enters the scene, there's comments about how Cora is so annoying because she never stops talking about being an Asari Huntress. Cora doesn't only talk about being an Asari Huntress, but haters like to exaggerate. But it's gotten so bad where any blind playthrough of Andromeda, as soon as Cora shows up on screen, before the player could even get to know her or talk to her, because, when you start Andromeda, Cora isn't your companion yet. She's just your dad's second in command. That's all you know her as. So under the comments under that video, before you even get her as a companion, there's already people saying, heads up, she gets annoying, or, oh, I couldn't stand Cora, she kind of ruined the game for me, she keeps talking about being an Asari Huntress, like, I don't like her character. It's just, they don't let these players form their own opinion about characters. They force their opinion onto these players, kind of like, in a way, backseat gaming, but forcing them to think this way about a certain character, or like, oh, you better love this character is my favorite. It's just, I've seen it happen with a certain YouTuber where they had no complaints about Cora whatsoever. And then under their comment section, a lot of people were talking about, like, oh, Cora never shuts up about being an Asari Huntress. Don't you notice that? And then the next video, they go and talk to Cora. Cora mentions it, and they're like, oh, you guys are right. She never shuts up about it. Wow. And then that person continued to just insult Cora every single time. Anytime Cora even mentions the Asari or the Asari arc or anything like that, this person would roll their eyes. And they wouldn't have if it wasn't for the comments. And it really did seem over dramatic. I know, like, being a content creator, you kind of put on a little performance in a way. Kind of like how reactors on YouTube, if you're watching a show alone and not recording yourself, you're hardly talking out loud. But if you're recording yourself, you're going to be saying every little thought that comes to your mind to be entertaining. So it's the same with video games. If you're playing a video game all alone, not recording yourself, you're just silent for the most part. So when these people are like recording themselves, playing a game, I get it. They have to talk and feel like they have to feel the silence and it really bugs me when they overreact with how much a character is annoying when they're actually not annoying. It's just all of these comments put that in your head. Because why doesn't anyone ever get annoyed with Kasumi never stop talking about being a thief? Every single time Kasumi talks, she kind of has to remind us she's a thief. Or Garrus, anytime he talks, he keeps mentioning he used to be with CSEC. Why isn't anyone saying like, hey, didn't you notice this about Garrus? So I'm not saying we should be annoyed with these characters. I'm saying we should treat Cora the way we treat these characters. And I'll get more into that later. And compare her with other characters who are passionate about their own hobbies and backgrounds, and why these characters, it's okay for these characters to talk about it, but it's not okay for Cora. I do want to point out that a lot of the extreme hate for Cora really seems to come from people who don't even like Andromeda as a game. So there are people who are like me. I loved Andromeda, but I prefer the trilogy. But there are people who just don't like Andromeda whatsoever, and I think that's where the bulk of the hate is coming from. I really don't see much hate from people who played Andromeda first, or only played Andromeda and didn't play the trilogy whatsoever. I don't really see a lot of hate coming from those people, but I'm sure they exist. But a lot of my examples and comparisons are going to be from the trilogy, so if you're one of those people who clicked on this and never played the trilogy, you will be confused, and I'm just going to go and talk to you as if you know the trilogy and all of the characters in there, so just a heads up. So I feel like if Cora was a character in the trilogy, she wouldn't get a lot of hate from players. But because she's in Andromeda, it's just another reason for them to hate Andromeda. I truly believe if Cora was in the trilogy, people would have no complaints. Or if she were an alien, people would have no complaints. Because I feel like, how can you not sympathize with her background and her character and her personality? The Asari are the first people to treat her with respect. She always wanted to feel normal, but like her own species, no human has treated her that way until she meets Alec. Like, Alec is like the first human, like aside from her own family, but like Alec was the first human to just treat her normal despite her having biotics, because for humans, biotics are like weirdos, and they just treat them like freaks, and that's why she really feels respected and seen with the Asari, because for Asari, biotics are like no big deal. So because of Alec, it's why she left the Milky Way behind to be in Andromeda. She left for him, because of him, and it's like she had nothing else left for her in the Milky Way. I'll get into more like info and proof of why she left to Andromeda, but just in case some listeners think me using info from the Mass Effect novel doesn't count, I'll just stay away from it for now, but I am going to be talking about it at the end. So like if you're not interested in the book stuff, then I'll just use examples given to us in the game. But I think it does count because the novels are canon, and all of the info in the novel is in the game. The novel just expands on it. Anyway, back to just the game info. Cora's passion and obsession for the Asari culture is more respectful than others who are into Asari, because most characters and players just want to fuck the Asari. And I'll also talk about this later, because there's an example of it in the novel. But Cora doesn't care about that. I already said why she cares about the Asari. It's just way more respectful and professional of why she feels so much passion and obsession with the Asari race versus everyone else, even players. Like, fans just can't deny that they over-sexualize the Asari and the fact that they just look like human females, but they're blue. So what the game gives us for Cora, too, to like double down on like this is not why Cora is obsessed with the Asari, is if you flirt with Cora as a female, she turns them down and she tells them that Asari have hit on her too, and she also turned them down because she's only into men. Everyone has like a passion, a hobby, or something they're really into that they just love talking about and sharing it with other people. Like anime, movies, shows, games, books, favorite YouTubers and streamers, sports, music, and the people who won't shut up about the 80s and 90s and how it was so much better back then. But that's the thing, like, it's so annoying where people can't separate the difference of being annoyed with a person or hating a person. So I don't understand why so many players think it's a good enough reason to hate Cora's character because she has an annoying character trait about her that they don't like. Cora is like this good-hearted character and like isn't malicious at all, isn't bossy, isn't, she's very professional and respectful, but none of that matters because she likes to talk about her years with the Asari on Thessia. Again, because this is such a ridiculous reason, I think the Mass Effect Trilogy fans over-exaggerate this about Cora because they're trying to find any little thing to hate on Andromeda because they just want justification for why they think the game sucks. It's just very annoying because there are a bunch of characters, not just in the Mass Effect series, but in any series ever created, there are a bunch of characters that I love, but also find annoying. So it's not like, oh, this character has this annoying little trait, I hate this character, why were they created? It's bad writing. It isn't. It's just, it makes the characters feel more real when you can have moments when you're frustrated by them, and then moments when you're cheering for them, and moments when you care about them, moments when you're angry at them. So just because there are characters where you roll your eyes at during moments, it doesn't mean it's a bad story. And these people know that. There are a bunch of characters in the trilogy that act the same way, but they give it a pass because they're in the trilogy and not in Andromeda. So here are some examples of characters in the trilogy who aren't hated every time they talk about something over and over again, their passions. So the first one is Liara. She is very obsessed with the Protheans. And then Shepard. She is very obsessed with Shepard, more so than all the other characters. And that's if you romance her or not. She's obsessed with Shepard. And when you romance her, it's amplified. And the other romances in the trilogy, obviously the characters care about Shepard a lot, but it doesn't seem like their life revolves around Shepard. They still have their own families to deal with and friends, and Caden has to deal with his students and everything like that. Like, these characters still feel like they're independent. While Liara, it's very sweet, but it just seems like her whole life kind of revolves around Shepard ever since Shepard entered her life. The next character is Thane. He's another one where whether you romance him or not, he still really cares enough about Shepard to where he'll try to communicate with them and send them video messages while they're under house arrest, while no other character does this. So, not that's an obsession or anything, but it kind of speaks volumes of how big of an impact Shepard had on Thane to where they're trying to stay connected to the only friend they've made in 10 years. So I kind of want to connect that to Cora, where the only human she made a real connection to her whole life was Alec. And Thane, all he talks about is being an assassin. He doesn't really talk about, like, what his favorite hobbies are or anything, what he does for fun. So, yeah, other than, like, that's all we know about Thane. He's a great character, but that's about it. Other than his son, but he talks about being an assassin way more. Next is the Krogan. It's almost all Krogan, except for like Grunt and then later Rex. But even Rex is guilty of this, where they're just talk about how much they hate Solarians and Turians. We play as a human, so why would that keep coming up every single time, you know? So that's like all they can talk about. There's like a few Krogan where they talk about other passions, like we met a sensitive Krogan in the trilogy where they really liked an Asari and was doing poetry. And then a sensitive Krogan in Andromeda where they were falling in love with an Angara and was worried about that Angara character. So almost every Krogan just wants to talk about the genophage every single time. Like, you're not going to talk about any other hobby. The same with Thane. Like, no other hobby. You're not going to talk about what you do for fun, your favorite show, movie, nothing. Alright. And then the Crorians. It's the same thing. Like, they keep talking about the Geth War. It's the same with the Krogan and Thane. No other hobbies you want to talk about, what you do for fun. So I can't wait. I'm very, very excited for the next Mass Effect game, to where I can talk to a group of Quarians and the conversation will have nothing to do with Geth. It'll just talk about something else, something they're into. I cannot wait for that. And the same with Krogan. Like, I can't wait for the next Mass Effect game where we could talk to a group of Krogan and it has nothing to do with the hatred of Solarians and Turians. And then, of course, I gotta quickly mention Garrus and his calibrations. That's like the fans' fault. It's only because in the second game, if you don't romance Garrus, he doesn't have anything extra to say until the main mission. So every time you talk to him, he'll tell you he's got to do some calibrations, and that's just a repeated line because he doesn't have any new dialogue. So it's not really Garrus always talking about calibrations, it's just players who kept pushing that button to talk to him and he keeps mentioning it. So it just became like a Mass Effect meme to where in the third game, the developers had Garrus mention, okay, maybe I mentioned calibrations too much. But I just had to mention that because that's something fans know about Garrus is his calibrations. Like, if you're gonna see Garrus in like a discussion, they're gonna mention calibrations. But that one doesn't really count, but I had to mention it. And the next one is Mordin. He always talks about being a scientist and how much he loves being a scientist. It's just every time you talk to him, that's what it's going to be about. He says it was the best years of his life. So that time in Thessia was the best years in Cora's life, and it was only 4 years. So it's pretty sad of like through all her life, only 4 of them was very good. And when we do get to learn more about Morden as a person and more of like what he enjoys, and finding out that he loves to sing, it's so great. But we get a lot more of those moments with Cora, because like I said, the haters exaggerate. Cora doesn't always talk about her life on Thessia. She doesn't. She talks about a lot of other stuff, what she enjoys, what she doesn't, how she feels about each character. So we get one thing from Morden, that he loves to sing, and then in the 3rd game, we learn that he kind of wants to spend retirement on the beach, but still has to throw in being a scientist and saying like he wants to study seashells. But yeah, that's the thing, we only learn about him wanting to visit the beach and that he loves to sing. But with Cora, we learn so much more about her and her character. And when you first meet Drac, she's not just this professional by the book person and very polite all the time. She stands up for herself. So when Drac first joins Ryder and their team, and the companions are like listing everything that's like an accomplishment, because you just made an outpost on Eos, and Drac is like, you guys need to find better things to call a success. And Cora comes in and jabs at him about the Krogan blowing up their own planet and making it, a wasteland. And Drac likes that. He respects Cora. He's like, oh, that's a good one. I like you. So he really respects that. While like when I watch blind playthrough, people and their reaction to that moment before Drac speaks up and Cora comes in with that jab, they're like, whoa, calm down, Cora. So it's like even them are kind of like defensive about like they treat Krogan so sensitively when Krogan don't want to be treated that way, and Cora knows it. It's like us, the players, obviously we're human. It's like we try to sympathize with the Krogan by trying to treat them delicately, but Cora, it's like she most likely learned more about the other aliens during her time among the Asari, that they taught her how each race likes to be treated. So she felt comfortable to say that to Drac because she knew that their race respects that kind of talk. And lastly is Joker, Edie, and James, where it's like they're like the big comedic relief of the series, and especially Joker and Edie, it's like we get it, they love jokes, and even in the 3rd game they say it more of like, oh, you two connect over humor. And I'm not saying that these characters should be hated or more fans should be annoyed by these things. Like, no, because I don't even find these things annoying. It's just I want to compare their level of passion and obsession with something they love with how Cora is passionate and obsessed with something she loves, but she gets hate while these characters don't. I just don't find it fair, and I'm pointing out just in case people never thought of this, because it really feels like she's hated because she's human and because she's in the Andromeda game. Also, Garrus, Peebee, and Vetra are characters that make it known over and over again that they just don't get along with their own people, that they're different. Garrus says that Turians are supposed to be all about dying for the cause, and like they take an order even if it's a bad order, and he never agreed with that. He doesn't like that. He always butted heads with his dad, and he says he always felt like he was a bad Turian. So with PB, she also makes it known and obvious that she just is not the typical Asari, and she even says so, and she just doesn't care about the Asari culture. That's why she left. She didn't want what was expected of her, so she left. She wants nothing to do with the Asari culture. Not that she doesn't care about her people, she just doesn't like the culture. And then there's Vetra, where she doesn't really hate the culture, she just doesn't know it. She says she never grew up on Palaven, and all she cares about is her sister and herself, and just surviving in the world. She doesn't care where, she just wants a good life for her and her sister. But yeah, these are 3 beloved characters that don't act like their own race. So they just felt like they don't fit in. So it's one of the reasons why Cora is one of my favorite characters, because she just reminds me of these 3 characters who are my favorites as well. So it's just strange to me that a lot of trilogy fans feel so annoyed by Cora. Now let's talk about her loyalty mission. When Cora helps Videria, the rookie, she helps her by speaking her language, like using the battle manuals for Asari huntresses. Cora knows, like, Videria reads these. She knows she read them. So Cora reminds her what they said every time Videria is having trouble, or she's nervous, or she's about to fight an enemy. Like, she really, like, this is new to her. I'm pretty sure she didn't go to Andromeda to fight a war. So she's just not expecting this. Like, if you play that mission, you know, the Asari, they had a rude awakening. So she's just not prepared, but she knows she's an Asari huntress. So Cora knows that Videria she read that. So she keeps talking to her from the battle manuals. And the fact that Videria is working with Sarissa, who wrote them. Versus, like, if someone else or like another alien just tells Videria to relax. Like, I think Videria likes it better that there's someone that understands her training and her culture. So I found it really annoying when a certain YouTuber was playing through that loyalty mission, and they kind of kept rolling their eyes every time Cora was helping that character by quoting the battle manual. Like, they just wanted Cora to shut up, but it's like, but Cora is helping them. Ryder isn't doing anything. Ryder would have just said, calm down, you got this, I need you, focus. So yeah, it just really seems like, oh, a lot of my watchers, a lot of my viewers don't like Cora. I'll get even more likes on this video if I keep giving Cora shit. So it's just Cora getting this unnecessary hate just because a bunch of comments says she's annoying. And it's just sad that, like, YouTubers can be swayed into thinking the way the viewers want them to think because they want to please their viewers. Not that it happens all the time. There's a bunch of times where the YouTuber will put their foot down, like, no, you guys are wrong about this. But it's just sad when it actually does happen, and it's just unfair. And it's like, if they never got any comments about Cora or even Caden, and it happened with Caden, these YouTubers wouldn't find these characters annoying or boring. Because I made another episode about Caden. It's called Understanding Caden and Ashley. I feel like if Caden were female, people would love her. They're like, oh, she's so sweet, this wholesome character. But because Caden's male, a lot of loud players are male gamers, and they find him boring. So, and they kind of swayed other people into thinking this. Like, almost every person who's done a blind playthrough doesn't like Caden. The only one I found that, like, he stood his ground and has his own opinion of Caden and actually understands Caden is that guy from Blind Wave. He did a first playthrough of the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and he's the only one I've ever seen that actually likes Caden. Anyways, so after that mission and we find out the truth, Cora had a lot of respect for Sarissa and just never thought she would sacrifice someone and hide the fact that she sacrificed someone. I feel like Cora would have still respected Sarissa if she had told the full truth from the start instead of looking like she wanted to be a hero. So I think that's what really pissed Cora off, because Sarissa kind of contradicts what she wrote in her battle manuals and like how to be a good protector. Cora respects Ryder no matter what the character chooses to do with that secret, because it's a gray area. If the initiative didn't need all the hope they can get and all the help they can get, it wouldn't be a gray area. Just exposing Sarissa would be the right thing to do. Plus, if you do expose Sarissa, Cora uses Sarissa's own words against her, like proving she's in the wrong. But because we're in a war with people who didn't sign up to be in a war, if Ryder chooses to keep Sarissa as Pathfinder and chooses to keep Sarissa's secret hidden, Cora understands. She doesn't argue with Ryder. Like, Liam and Jal do. Like, they will argue with your Ryder if they don't agree with what Ryder did on their own loyalty missions. They argue. But Cora never does that. Just further proving she's way more respectful and way more just not childish whatsoever like Liam is. Like, for me, I can't stand Liam. I think it's the first character in a Mass Effect game of a companion that I just couldn't stand talking to. So that's what like makes her one of my favorite characters, is just how she's not childish like that. She understands the gray area. She understands like your choice no matter what. She can be frustrated and she can show that, but ultimately she falls in line. She doesn't act like a child. And I'm gonna like start going into the book now, because I want to explain why Cora has such respect for her Pathfinder when her history is with Alec, not his kids. So it's like she's showing respect to the twins, or whichever twin you choose to play as. She's showing respect to the twin because, in respect to Alec, she was meant to be second in command, and after this loyalty mission, it was important for two things: to like her to not put people on pedestals because they're gonna disappoint you. No one's perfect, and she has to learn that. And the fact that the person that really disappointed her was an Asari huntress of a battle manual she's been following. And Alec, the first human to gain her respect. So when Alec dies and makes one of his kids the next Pathfinder, because he could have saved their life without also making them Pathfinder, but he chose to do both. She's frustrated by that. It's not like throughout the whole game she's like petty with Ryder or anything. She doesn't treat you like a rival. She even says that she doesn't want one. She just wants to understand why she wasn't chosen, and it frustrates her. And after this mission, she gets it, or she thinks she does. Like, we know, if you read the novel, you know the real reason, but it's not an important reason. Well, maybe that's not what I meant. It's not an important thing to know. So if you didn't read the novel, it's not like, whoa, why didn't they have that in the game? It's so important. It's not. It's just it's very fun to know certain information by reading the books that the game doesn't tell you, because this is Ryder's point of view. This is Shepard's point of view. And the books aren't in their point of view. So there are a few things that Shepard and Ryder doesn't know. And I like that, because they're fun facts, but not important facts. Anyways, I wanted to say that there is a reason Alec didn't make her Pathfinder, and it's because Sam just can't transfer to someone who isn't of his bloodline. But he keeps that a secret because he thinks like, oh, maybe we can fix that in the future, but for now it's gonna have to be one of my kids to be the next Pathfinder if something happens to him. But he doesn't tell anyone that, and in the game he deletes or blocks Sam's memories, so Sam doesn't even know that, or doesn't say anything either. So unlike what fan fiction thinks, Sam can't read your mind. Sam can't read it. So if in the novel, Cora kind of like sub-vocalizes, or like kind of like talks to herself or whispers to herself, or it's like, or talks under your breath. And you know, in normal, it's kind of like everyone does that, but we're not used to someone responding to that. So she could kind of talk to Sam privately by just kind of sub-vocalizing or talking under her breath. But if you don't do that, if Alec doesn't do that, Sam doesn't know what's going on in his head. So, just to get that out there, that is the reason Alec didn't transfer authorization to Cora to be the next Pathfinder, and just saving his kid's life without, making him also Pathfinder, or her also Pathfinder. But Cora believes the reason he chose his kid was because he knew they were capable of making these heavy decisions and these choices. So that's what Cora believes, and us, the player, believe, if you didn't read the novel. So if you didn't read the novel, you also believe, oh, this is my dad really believed in me. So that's why this loyalty mission is so important to Cora's character, because she no longer feels like this heaviness or this confusion of why wasn't I chosen, and she learned not to put people up on pedestals. It just makes her character grow, and the fact that she respected your character as Pathfinder out of respect for Alec. But now she doesn't have to do it just for Alec. She actually respects you because she knows what you can do. So starting off with Cora's mindset in Mass Effect Andromeda Initiation, page 9 says it's the first human crowd she'd seen in 4 years. So it starts off with her coming back to Earth. and just staring at a human crowd that she finds very chaotic. And it's just people yelling at staff, yelling for their friends and family, and stopping in the middle of a walkway to check a message, and just randomly sprinting. And she talks about how other races are more organized or in more formation when they're in a crowd. And even with Krogan, you can kind of anticipate how they're gonna walk or where they're gonna go if they like spot a battle master, and how they're gonna when they might stand in the middle of a crowd as if they spot something. Anyway, the book explains it better, but she's basically saying she's in cultural shock right now. And on page 19, she's dealing with a racist that says she's a traitor to humanity, all because she spent years on Thessia as a human. And her response is, well, I've never called Earth home. And on page 30, she says, I grew up on a cargo freighter, not a planet. I grew up like any other Traverse kid. So that's also telling us she's just not from Earth. She didn't grow up there. It's just a place to visit. That's it. It's not her home world. And then, page 22, someone asked whether Cora had slept with any Asari during her years on Thessia. So she's just dealing with a bunch of ignorance right now, and she just can't stand her own kind. And she meets a friend there, and an Asari friend, and she says that she never thought of her own kind as primitive, but now she kind of feels primitive compared to Thessia. And her friend tells her on page 23, look, so you're having some cultural shock. I mean, I'm not sure scaring the piss out of some xenophobe is the best way to handle it, but what you're feeling is pretty normal. I've spent 20 years on Palaven once. Thought I found the one. Anyway, after I came home, took me weeks to stop wondering why all the faces I saw were blue and not silver, and why nobody wanted to talk about tactics or public service. I kept feeling like Thessia was wrong. You'll get over it. So the way Cora is like comparing humans to Asari is kind of like comparing Americans to Japanese people. If you're used to one culture and you go visit another, you're gonna see a big difference and already have an immediate opinion. You're either gonna think, oh, this way of life is weird, I don't like it, or oh, this way of life is better, I prefer this. Or like city life versus country. So if you're just used to the country and you go to the city, you're gonna have the same thing. You're gonna either think this is too much, I don't like it, I want to go back to the quiet country life, or you're gonna think this is exciting, this is way better than the country life, and vice versa. So that's what Cora is feeling, is cultural shock. And I find that so interesting. I love her character. So on page 180, Cora meets an idiot. She says her name is Cora Harper, found at the elevator shaft after their motion alarm went off. Former Alliance and LT. I think this is an Asari weapon though. That's an Asari made armor too. You some kind of blue pie? What? Asari fetishizer? Groupie into the blue? Where have you been that you've never heard of that? Some frontier hellhole? Earthers think everybody cares about their stupid pop culture. The players that hate Cora feel like the same type of characters that make fun of her in the novel. Like, again, she likes the Asari because she fits in with them, feels normal. Cora doesn't, like, sexualize them like other characters and players do. She never got along with her own kind because of her biotics. Like, that's, like, the whole thing, where it's like, humans just treat biotics like freaks. And now she really doesn't get along with her own kind because they act like idiots, perverts, and racists. Now let's talk about why she went to Andromeda and how Alec gave her hope and helped her find a purpose. Page 31, when Alec first meets Cora, he asks her how she found out about the initiative. She said that this sounded like the kind of venue that would give me a purpose, that I was wasted on Thesia and even in the Alliance. I won't live long enough to become a true Asari huntress after all, and humanity is still too afraid of biotics to know what to do with the average one, let alone one that spikes as high as I do. She thought the initiative might actually be different enough, flexible enough, to know what to do with someone like me. Alec, on page 261, he explains in more detail the hope he has for humanity in Andromeda. Think about a society built around biotics, like Thesia, but us. Think about schools that offer biotics training as a matter of course, maybe as an elective at first, but still part of the standard curriculum. He'd read Harper's dossier. She'd been homeschooled aboard her parents' freighter and had been forced to join the Alliance to get training for her biotics. Would she have left, though, if she had a choice? More biotics are being born every day, even here in the Milky Way. Until we stop using EZO, biotics might be a minority, but they're still normal for us. Hell, that's half our problem now. We're not willing to admit that the definition of normal humanity has changed. We keep fighting to preserve a reality that had already long gone and maybe never existed in the first place. Harper had begun to pace slowly, listening. Alec pressed his case. So think about a society built around a new normal, where aliens aren't the enemy, just the species next door. Where biotics can be more than human weapons. Artists maybe. Where we're not still bogged down with old nationalism and classism. You really believe all that's possible? It's not just bullshit? Sam, show the preliminary curriculum that's been designed for the first human children born in Andromeda. You actually planned out the schools? If there's one thing we can count on, it's that human beings will start screwing the instant they're out of cryo. Accidents happen. Bad planning happens. We need to be ready. Biotic adaptation and control, it read. She inhaled, and for the first time since he's met her, there was something like wonder on Cora Harper's face. This is why Cora respects whichever one of his kids becomes Pathfinder, because she trusts that he made the right call, even if she doesn't understand it. That's how much of Alec's respect and treatment of her meant to her, because even more so that he's not an Asari. So that's saying how big of a trust she had to keep following his plan. Because yes, she only found out, and she only went to the initiative because she was kind of forced to. Not forced, but just kind of like, while this Asari that I look up to says I should join and doesn't want me around anymore, my only enjoyment was being around them. But if she doesn't want me around, and I can't be around, I might as well do what she recommends. So she found the initiative because of someone she looked up to, and she met someone who she really respects. She met a friend. Alec was the main reason she took this journey. So that really, really speaks volumes of how much he meant to her. And I really, really love this novel. I really recommend reading it. She really connects with a Sam. It's not the Sam, but it's kind of like, I'm not really good with the technical stuff, but it's a part of Sam, but it becomes its own person, and it ends up getting corrupted, and the the original Sam has all of this Sam's memories, who she calls Sammy. So Sam gets all of Sammy's memories and knows everything, what Cora and Sammy talked about and how they connected and everything, and I just really, really enjoy that. And it's because it gets corrupted whenever Sammy goes back into Sam. That is the reason why she can't be Pathfinder, is for some reason Sam can't be transferred without being corrupted unless it's within his bloodline. And I think it has to do with his Sam is more advanced than the other arcs. So the other Sams on the other arcs just aren't as intelligent or as advanced as his Sam, and he wants his Sam to stay that way instead of being transferred and not, so that's probably why the other Sams in the other arcs, they can transfer to whoever with no problem. It's because they're not as alive as the human Pathfinder Sam. Again, it's like, it's juicy extra information if you read the novel, but really not that interesting, because in the game itself explains that Sam is more complicated. So you just don't get the little added information that your dad chose you to become Pathfinder because he had no choice, not really because he believed in you. And I find that funny. So there it is. So if you're not a reader, I really recommend at least listening to an audio version of this novel, Mass Effect Andromeda Initiation, because it's read by the voice actor of female Ryder. So she's a voice actor, she obviously does a good job. And the reason I'm not calling the twins Scott and Sarah is because I hate their names, and they are not my headcanon. And the game lets you change the name, so it's not really canon. Anyways, I'm annoyed by the fact that they chose two really white names when there could have been other names to choose from that were more ambiguous to whatever race they could have been. But they chose white names. Anyways, I hope this gave you some more insight and understanding of Cora's character, because she gets unfairly hated, and if you're one of those people that never had any complaints about her, but after you read a comment or another fan talks to you about it and says oh, didn't you notice she keeps talking about a sorry huntress, and then the next time you play the game you're like, hey, they're right, and it never bothered you before, I hope this opens your eyes to there are other characters who keep mentioning their passions and obsessions as well, but they're not annoying to you, but Cora is. So just kind of ask yourself, if you find Cora annoying, no matter what race she is, or if she was a man, or if she was in the trilogy, then you're fine. But if you're just kind of hating her because she's a woman, or because she's human, or because she's in Andromeda, then it's a you problem, not a character problem. And it's totally something of something hard to admit when you do find yourself hey, why do I hate this character? Would I hate them if they were someone different? Same personality, but someone different. And it is a struggle because you kind of are in denial of it. For example, when I first watched Breaking Bad, I also found Skylar annoying, and once I asked myself if it was because she was a woman, and the answer was yes, I kind of had to stop for a moment and just think about it, and then she just instantly didn't become annoying to me. She just wasn't that annoying. It was understandable. Everything she had a problem with, it was understandable. So just imagine being in her shoes and someone you know and love is sneaking out of the house. Aren't you also gonna question them? You're just not gonna be like, oh, just stay out of his way. Like, no, you're also gonna be questioning him and asking, where is he going, you know? And another one is in Life is Strange. A lot of the hate that the main character Max gets. And I had to just kind of stop myself and think, do I find Max annoying because of how she looks versus how Chloe looks? And the answer was yes. It's if they were to switch their character designs, same personality, a lot of people would love Max if Max looked like Chloe. And if Chloe looked like Max, people would open their eyes to how unreasonable Chloe was. So anyways, that's all I'm saying, is just kind of take a step back and see if the hatred you have for Cora is actually justified. So I love that this novel exists because it has haters in character form for Cora to interact with and meet, and the way she deals with them is so satisfying. So yeah, if Cora wasn't human, players would find her sorry background interesting. Thanks for listening.